raincoats. I've got about 12 raincoats. I think I probably need 12 raincoats. I'm not going to be part of many of them. I might only wear one of them. I tend to slip on an old Burberry, funnily enough. A lot of people think Burberry invented the raincoat. They didn't. They invented gabardine, which all credit to them, but the first trench coat in this style was made for soldiers in the trenches, and it had lots of little military things going on. You see, the epaulets, you have your officers' pips on the epaulets here. Now on the belt, you get little D-rings, which they still put on these days. That was for your gun and anything else you might want to hang on there. So usually there'll be a panel here on trench coats, a little D-ring here that will be for the whistle when they're going over the top. Now this is a Grenfell raincoat. This is the holy grail of raincoats. This is the best raincoat in the world, and it's a trench coat, and it's got a Melton lining in it. This was the most expensive raincoat you could buy. I'll probably never wear this. I don't like the trench coats. Awfully, a bit too fussy for me, but they're popular. What I prefer, the one I'll sort of slip on if it actually is raining, and I've got it handy, just an old Burberry one, and I sort of favour this tonic green colour. I mean, this is just no nonsense, nothing, no unnecessary stuff, just something that keeps you dry. Some of my customers sometimes put their hands in their pocket and think there's a hole or something. No, that's any decent raincoat has this facility. When you do it up and it's raining, and then you get to your car and you think, oh, where's my car keys? Well, they're in my trouser pocket. That's so that you can get your inside pockets without having to undo the raincoat. This is a nice old Burberry one, when Burberry still was the real company, spelt Burberry's with an S on the end. When their main shop in London didn't say Burberry's, but a Scotch House. You see a Scotch House raincoat, that was the big Burberry shop. When they suddenly got successful in the fashion business, they changed the name to Burberry, which just sounds a bit more international and cool, and they changed the Scotch House shop into the Burberry flagship store. Lovely aqua scutum one here again, with a zip out lining. These are just fantastic. These are again nice and simple to wear. The zip out lining is just a nice thing to have in winter because it's as warm as an overcoat. Now, I think the film was the Ipcress file. There's a picture, I think, for the film poster with Michael Caine wearing a aqua scutum or a Burberry raincoat. But it just came about there. And they became really fashionable there. Everybody wanted them. Quite often people come into the shop and say, I've got those Michael Caine ones. They were fine until you found out when you actually went out in the rain, being a raincoat and waterproof, rain would run down the coat and absolutely soak your knees, and you'd get a big soaked patch on your trousers like that. So a raincoat has to be past your knees, really, if it's going to be any good at all. I love duffel coats. There's absolutely nothing as comfortable as a duffel coat. Surprising because they can be sort of open and yet they're still warm. The pockets are in exactly the right place to just stick your hands in them, especially when you've got phones and all that sort of stuff these days. It's such an incredibly well thought out, simple garment. Originally, I think the first we saw them was for the British Navy. You'll see sort of captains and admirals on battleships wearing them with a big polo neck white submariner's jersey. But there's different makers, and for me, the only maker, if I'm going to own a duffel coat myself, and I think I've got 3, this make, Gloverall, is just head and shoulders above all the others. Now suddenly, duffel coats have become incredibly fashionable. And so people like Ralph Lauren and I think Yves Saint Laurent making duffel coats. Guarantee, if it's fashion people making them, they're going to be rubbish. They're not going to stand up. I mean, I've seen duffel coats from fashion companies like Laura Ashley and Monsoon and people, and you just wouldn't wear them on a battleship. But these Gloverall coats are absolutely fabulous, as long as they continue to make them like this. Now, they've nicked a lot of things from different people. The fabric, I think, is the reason they're called Duff Coats. There's a town in Belgium that used to make the fabric. It's called Duffel. I think I'm right on that. These toggles, I think we nicked this from China. On Chinese garments, they had a sort of lozenge shape fastening that worked like this duffel coat. I don't know if it's come from anywhere else, but it's such a fantastic garment. There's a lot of adjustment in the hood. You can actually bring it down close to your scalp if you're really seriously cold. Never actually used that. See, it's got a piece of elastic in it as well. Now, there are duffel coats from other manufacturers, as I've said, and there's 2 or 3 manufacturers that claim to have made the original duffel coat and tend to be the governors, but I see an awful lot, and I've worn a lot of these. Only Gloverall ones. I think this company's, I mean, I might be wrong, it might be as big as Burberry soon, because they've started making a lot of other garments. They do a wax short duffel coat as well. And I recently had through my hands a duffel coat, but in white cotton canvas. So you've got a summer duffel coat. But it was quite chic and smart. So maybe, I only hope that they don't go the same way as R.M. Williams and Bell Staff and these companies that once made super workwear and incredibly durable garments. And then as soon as they become a fashion company, the accountants come in and say, oh, we can make these cheaper, you know. We can use cheaper materials. I mean, Ralph Lauren, they must have a rule where they just won't spend more than about $20 on any material they buy, because it's very photogenic stuff, but you get a tweed suit from Ralph Lauren, it's not going to last very long. Gentlemen, I give you the car coat. Now these pretty much didn't exist until suddenly the position you sat down in your car stopped being like this and sort of started being more like this. And a long Chesterfield style overcoat would pull you down and tug you all over the place. So some bright spark came up with the car coat with a shorter back. Now, they weren't exactly the most stylish thing. If you had a 2-seat sports car, like a Healy 3000, you would have a sheepskin, and they were pretty cool. But the car coat, the young tearaways wouldn't wear them, the teddy boys wouldn't wear them really. It was pretty much old man's kit, but they look pretty cool now. And this is just typical of your car coat. A lot were made by tailoring companies like Dunn to sell as a ready-to-wear thing. Yeah, this is made by Dunn. From that label, I'd say this one's probably late 50s, 1960s. I've had quite a few of these through my hands. It's a lovely thing. It's all natural materials. Now it looks quite stylish, but when the Beatles were happening, you didn't want to be walking around in a car coat. But, of course, a lot of people were stuck with their long overcoats that didn't really work in the MGA. So a lot of overcoats at that time were shortened. You tell the ones that have been shortened because maybe in haste they just lopped the bottom off and then realised that maybe the bottom was quite close to the bottom and you would leave the vent at the back very, very short indeed. I mean, there's little point in that 3-inch vent there. This would have been a good 6 inches longer, I'd say. There's another one here. These are lovely coats. They've been made by high street tailors and shortened for use in cars that you lie down in. This one's a lovely John Collier coat, and again it's been shortened. You've got a much shorter vent there. I think this would have been quite an elegant garment when it was its original length. Super material. Actually, it does look pretty good now, but this would have come down to my knees. This is a really nice coat. Look at this. top hats. As a lot of people probably know, I've been making really quite beautiful waistcoats for rich people and very nice people to get married in. And of course, people don't really wear top hats at weddings anymore, although the father of the bride and the groom might. But there's no obligation for people to wear top hats at weddings. So the only people that wear them now is where you have to wear them, which is in the enclosures at Royal Ascot. Now, you can turn up at Ascot in your lovely brand new sort of Porsche or something and not get noticed at all. Turn up in a vintage Bentley and you get admiring glances. It's a bit the same with top hats. Unfortunately, the new Chinese felt hats are not all that elegant. But if you haven't got a silk hat, you're going to have to make one of those. Now, silk hats, the last one was made, I think, in 1963. I think it was Herbert Johnson made the last one. It's a special silk velvet, and 1963 was when the velvet ran out, so I'm told. Now, it's not an ordinary velvet. It's, if you imagine velvet is like a lawn that's just been mowed, and but the silk plush is, if you imagine a lawnmower that does one long blade and one short one, one long one, short one, that creates a wispy effect that you can brush around on a cardboard frame and make a nice hat out of it. So this really beautiful stuff which will never ever be made again. Now, there was one guy who supplied the whole world with this silk plush, some French chap. And I think the machine was being moved from one place to another. It got dismantled. It just never got mantled again. Now, the British government heard about this, and diplomatic hats and Royal Naval bicorn hats and things have this same silk plush on the sides. And the British government, or somebody, Home Office or whatever, said, "Okay, oh boy, what's it going to cost to get you back in business?" I think the price he gave them was like, we can get a battleship for that kind of money. So that was it. That was the end of black silk plush. It will never happen again. So we'll never see the skills that went into making this kind of hat, and we'll never see this material again. I've often thought that on one of my trips to China, I like to tackle some Chinese hat manufacturer and make a nice, lightweight, felt, elegant shaped hat with a proper leather lining headband and a proper silk thing. Now, silk is really cheap in China. I mean, it doesn't cost even £1 to put a real silk lining in. And they've got a lot of pigskin in China. They eat a lot of pork. So, you know, pigskin lining instead of a plastic one would be much nicer. This hat is supplied to Harrods, but I can tell it's made by Lock. I recognise this white sweatband inside. That's Lock signature. So when Locks used to make hats, I think this was one of theirs. These sell on size. If you've got a big head, you might be in a long queue waiting for a size 7.5, and you might have to pay thousands for it. If you've got a very tiny head, you might pick up one for a couple of £100. This one is about my size. It's a 7 1/8, but it's not the right shape. See, that's a problem with top hats. Not just getting the right circumference, it's got to be your head shape as well. There was a thing called a conformator for people that did bespoke hats, made-to-measure hats. I'm going to go into that later because it was quite fraudulent. But yeah, this hat sort of fits me, but rocks from side to side because it's a bit too wide and not quite long enough for my long head. So I can put it on, but it's a bit contrived to get a nice fit. They get dusty if you keep them out of the box. And what you give them the white with is not as any kind of stiff brush, and never get any water on them. But quite often you would supply like a little velvet pin cushion, and you use that to wipe counterclockwise around the hat. I'm going to use the sleeve of this old, already slightly damaged velvet jacket, and just a soft velvet rag like that will take all the dust out of it and leave it nice and combed in the right direction. You might even see the dust coming out of there. It looks like smoke coming out. And again, counterclockwise around the hand, and you put a nice shine on it like that, and in the top, so get all that dust off the top there, and that looks a little bit better. Now, top hats can sort of lose their blackness, especially the felt band around there. There's a product that's made for sort of toning up black suede shoes. Very high viscosity. Does say on the can, cannot harm any fabrics. And if you give your hats, it also works on felt bowler hats. If they've got a little bit grey, give them a spray with that, let them dry off, and it really makes them look 10 times as good. I'll show on another video. I'll show people how to do that. When you get these old hats, they've frequently got initials actually stitched onto the band on the inside, or just stuck in like that. Hats look pretty similar, so when you go to the cloakroom, you want to make sure you get your own hat back, and so people would put their initials in. Caps. Caps are absolutely bloody brilliant. If you're a manufacturer, you make a suit, you've got like half a metre left. You can get maybe 3 caps out of that, certainly get 2, depending which one. The 8-piece cap, which Peaky Blinders has made incredibly popular, that's used out of tiny scraps. Now, the history of caps, this is the brilliant thing about them. In Victorian times, you had companies that did caps and schoolboy trousers, and that was a popular thing. Small garments that you could make from scraps purchased by the sackload, purchased by weight, from bigger manufacturers that made coats and overcoats and what have you. Now, the outer fabric, they get from suit and coat makers. The lining, from suit and coat makers. This stuff here, it's called Petersham, they got from corset makers. Everybody wore corsets in Victorian times, and so you could buy this stuff as scraps. Now, inside this cap, if it's made properly, there's an internal lining which is a piece of hessian. It was very breathable, and of course everything was delivered in sacks in Victorian times, from coal to vegetables and everything else. So all these things, the hessian, the outer, the inner, this Petersham, all available as scraps from manufacturers. But now, if you buy a modern cap, you can't do this with it, because there's a big lump of plastic in the peak. Even the expensive ones you buy in these plastic peaks, and they're not really all that comfortable. What those clever Victorians did, everything was made out of leather. There are saddlers everywhere. There's a crescent-shaped piece of saddle leather in there, boot leather in there, which they'd get from boot and saddle manufacturers. And so when you put this on your head, if it's made properly, this flexes to the shape of your head. It's not a rigid lump of plastic inside there. And you can truthfully claim, if you make a cap like mine, that they're completely renewable recycling materials. This lining in this particular one is actually some Chanel ball gown silk. I bought some surplus silk from some people, and it said Chanel on it, so I presume this silk was going to be made for a ball gown or something. So I get rid of all these little bits of corduroy left over from trousers. This lining here, this is silk, but in all my suits I use a cotton twill lining, same as the military tailors. But yeah, the caps are absolutely brilliant for getting rid of all the old rubbish that you have in the factory. Also skirts, but I'll go into skirts later. Yeah. I love looking inside stuff. I might have talked about canvassing before. I love to just count the spaces between the stitches to see if they're straight, and wonder who did it, and wonder if they got away with it. But anyway, never to criticise anyone else's work, because this is probably better than I could do myself. So anyway, this is an old Huntsman coat, very much Peaky Blinders style, double-breasted, sometimes called Chesterfield. It's got a velvet collar. Not an inset velvet collar, but nice velvet collar. It's a really, really beautiful coat, and sadly it's not my size, because I'd love that. It's really nice. It's a bit heavy, but they're not heavy when you get them on, a bit like the German leather coats. If you ask somebody to hold them, they say, oh wow, they're really heavy. When you put it on, it just feels normal. Anyway, someone or something has happened to this, and the lining, it came to me like this. The lining's gone. It's 1950s, I think, Huntsman. I'm going to put a lining back in it. And it's not difficult to do. I did a similar thing with, I do like a bit of old Harris tweed. And this was a fabulous old, I think it's made by Horns or someone, the, forget who. Yeah. Yeah, no, Hope Brothers, right, really nice old English brand, and the old 1940s Harris Tweed level. Now this was half lined, so a lot of stuff that gets made for the American market is sort of lighter weight. They like the Harris Tweed, but it's a little bit hot for them, so they don't line it fully. So I put this tassel lining in here and finished it sort of quite nicely, so it looks sort of quite original really. It's now a warm coat, and this is my my winter coat, and this raglan sleeve style of this coat, they are so nice. It's just like getting in a blanket or something. They're really comfortable. They're stylish. You can wear them a little bit oversized and they just look great. Unbelievably comfortable. This one has got the nice moleskin pockets, which a lot of old overcoats have velvet in the pockets, and it costs nothing extra to do it. I don't know why they don't now. Put your hands in and you think, oh wow, yeah, I want to keep my hands in these pockets. Yeah. But yeah, so this, I added the lining to make this a little bit warmer, and I'm going to do a similar thing with the Huntsman. Now, it's not a difficult job to reline an overcoat, especially if you got lucky like me. About 20 years ago, I bought a lot of these. They are, I think it might have been from some theatre company. These are suit bags and garment bags, but they've been made out of lining material and made a long time ago. So this is genuine 1950s lining material, 100% cotton. So it's perfect if you're going to reline a vintage piece like this. What I'll do with the Huntsman one is I line it to about here, which you need it to be a bit sort of slippy to slide on. You can't line the top and the sleeves with wool, it would be uncomfortable. And I'm going to line the lower bit with this. This is an old kilt. I might change my mind on the tartan. I've got quite a lot of these. You get yards and yards and yards of tartan with a kilt. And this is a large size man's kilt, 100% wool. It's got a few bits of sort of moth damage here and there, so I'm going to unpick it and get myself a very long length of this tartan. And so the bottom of this coat might be a different tartan to this, because this is maybe a little bit bright, makes a bit too much of a statement. So the top will be in this nice black sort of satin cotton, the shiny side of course. Yeah. So the top will be like that, and the bottom will be this lovely tartan. Now, it's not difficult to reline. You don't really have to have a lot of great skills to reline a jacket. You just take your cloth, and all you need to do, see, this already has one seam up that side. Could even reuse that seam. So you just make a start by pinning it into position and going along till it feels like going to stop, and you can very easily work out the pattern for a lining. This is going to be really great. I think by February I might have it finished. Sadly, it's not my size. It's about a size 42, but lovely bit of Huntsman kit. You'll never ever see this kind of cloth being made again. These buttons don't exist now, these lovely Savile buttons. Silk velvet on the collar. Really beautiful thing, cut by one of their legendary cutters at Huntsman. Absolutely super garment. So I'll be spending probably about a day on this to finish it, so I'll let you have a look later. I may have mentioned this before. It's a fabulous find. This is a Huntsman overcoat, which for some inexplicable reason somebody's taken the lining out of it and as a project, but they didn't get to finish it. I get to finish it sometime now. I was incredibly lucky. From a theatrical company that I used to supply, they had a lot of surplus suit covers. This is one of them. Just ordinary suit covers, which are like big pillowcases. So they just put over jackets and suits. But they've been made out of lining material, and they've been made a long time ago. So what we have here, I've got about 50 of these. I've got a fantastic source of vintage lining material, absolutely appropriate to lining the top of this overcoat. In fact, checking with a little bit of the original lining left here, you can see it's almost exactly the same thing. The important thing is it's 100% cotton, because I have a rule with linings about not using synthetics. Now, you don't have to be an expert tailor to reline something. There's a bit of give and take in lining. Now, it's quite simple to start. I'm going to do the top. Now, the top bit has to be sort of slippy and slidey so you can get it on comfortably. But the bottom, if you want to be a little bit warmer, you might use a Melton, and I'm going to use, for a bit of fun, some of this. I think this is King's Own House or Gordon, I'm not sure. It's one of the Highland Regiment things, and I've got lots and lots of surplus. I used to make tartan trews out of this stuff, and now the Highland Regiments have been disbanded into just one Highland Regiment. There's a lot of this stuff floating around, and it's pretty cheap. Now, it's really quite simple. The lining's in 3 or 4 different parts, and you simply start. I'm going to start down in this corner here. First of all, you'll put a hem like that to start off with. So you're going to start like this, and you'll have a little half-inch hem on the other side. So you're going to press that so that it looks like that. Now, you could pin it into place. I always like to just tack it into place with some white cotton. So I'll do this really quickly here. I'm not going to cut this cloth until I've got this tacked up to the waist where it wants to be. Do this really quickly. Great big stridey, because when we stitch it on, it'll be in a black cotton, and this is just to hold it in place. And before you actually put any fine stitching in it, you just press it and sort of shrink it and make sure. So, see, now that's basically, oh, oops, missed. This is quite tough old fabric. It's probably made by Crombie. So that's got to hold that in place. We'll press it before we actually stitch the thing in. Now, this is going up to about the waist here, and we put the bottom in first because the top bit is going to overlap when you put it on. So exactly the same thing with the top bit. So I will pretty much do all this side up to the shoulder and up to the sleeve, and do exactly the same thing with this. It's going to look pretty much like that. I love the fact that tartan's geometric, so you get your lines straight very, very easily. So in the same way, this is just going to be tacked on like that, following the original line. So that's what it's going to look like when it's finished. It's going to be quite a nice overcoat, I think. Unfortunately, it's not my size. That size big for me. Even though there is a tradition of wearing overcoats a little bit on the big side, this is going to go to somebody else.